Hello, good day, everyone. I'm very glad to have you here once again as we proceed with our training on project management tools as organized by GARD Academy, specifically under the Big Push Bootcamp. Once again, my name is Godson Inchi. I'm the lead instructor of this Big Push Bootcamp. Today, we are going to continue with session 2 of the project management course, and we are going to discuss project management tools. And in our next lesson, we are going to look at the project management frameworks. Yeah. So, first, we are going to look at what we mean by project management tools. I am 100% sure that you would have knowledge about project management tools, but then let's just have an overview of it so that we link it to other concepts we have. Right. So, project management tools are instruments, techniques, and software that help teams plan, execute, track, and deliver projects effectively. So, you see, usually when people hear of project management tools, they just focus on the software side of things. But that is not just what we mean by project management, what we mean by project management tool. Right. Good. So, yes. So project management tools, we are not just looking at software, we are looking at instruments and techniques as well. Right. Yes. And why is it important to know the selection criteria, or why tool selection is very important in project management? We need to know this very well. Right. Now, the wrong tool creates extra work instead of reducing it. So one of the things that you have to take note of is that with project management, you are looking at finding a way you can complete a project within a specific timeline. So you have to be very particular about the stuff you do. You shouldn't do something that is going to prolong the expected duration of the project or the expected timeline of the project. Right? Yes. So the wrong tool creates extra work instead of reducing it. So you have to be mindful of the the tool you select, right? And overly complex tools frustrate teams and reduce adoption. So, you see, one of the things that you have to take note of is as a project manager, you are not just handling the tools yourself, right? Your people, your team is going to collaborate on the system you are using as well. So, if the system is so complex, it's going to frustrate them. And if the work is complex, if already the work they are doing is complex and it's overwhelming, right? So if you add a more complex tool, it's going to frustrate them. And in fact, some of them would not like to use such tools, right? So it might reduce adoption. Now, too simple tools fail when projects grow in complexity. So sometimes there are certain systems that when you use, in the long run, it's going to affect your project execution in the sense that, let me give you an example. Spreadsheets, some people use spreadsheets to manage their projects, right? It is a very good style, but then sometimes when the project becomes so complex, right, it ends up affecting the project execution because you end up putting so many content, so many contexts, and a whole lot, and it's going to make things messy, right? And then mismatched tools lead to workarounds that waste time. So this is very, very important. You need to know the tool you are using, right? And you need to know the reason why you are selecting that particular tool so that in the long run, it's not going to affect your project execution. Right? Good. So when it comes to project management, we have categories, right? Project management tools fall into distinct categories based on their primary function. So we are going to look at three main categories. We are going to look at the planning tools, the tracking tools, and then the communication tools. So we are going to take them one by one and then digest it further. Right. So when we talk about the planning tools, now what we are going to do now is here we take the various categories, then we look at the tool, the purpose, and then what it is best for. Right. So under planning tools, we have work breakdown structure, we have Gantt chart, we have network diagram, and then we have project charter. Now, all these tools, all these various tools under planning tools have different purposes, right? So Gantt chart is used to visualize schedule with dependencies over time. Network diagram is used to map task relationships and critical path. And then work breakdown structure decompose deliverables into manageable pieces. And project charter document or authorization, objectives, and then scope. Right. So I mean, you can read what's displaying, right? But then we are going to take them one by one, right, for you to get a vivid understanding of it. Right, good. So first, we are going to look at what or how work breakdown structure looks like, right? And then we'll map it with the what it is best for, right? Good. So this is how a work breakdown structure looks like. So the whole idea is, let's say you have a project, right? The project is, let's say you are supposed to organize a program. That's just, I mean, it can be a project, right? Good. Now, you need to break down the project into a well structured way. Because if you don't have a well structured breakdown of the work, you're really going to struggle. And in fact, you might end up adding stuff that are irrelevant, or you might end up omitting stuff that are important, right? So let's look at this very well. Let's say this is the project, right? Now we break it down into initiation, planning, execution, control, and then closure. Now, under initiation, what are we going to do? 1, we are going to appoint a project manager and project team. 2, we are going to define the project goals. 3, we are going to get the customers buy-in. And then 4, we are going to assess feasibility. And under the planning stage, what are we going to do? We are going to do risk analysis. We are going to create schedule and task plan. We are going to set budget. We are going to establish communication process. And then it continues like that. So when you have a very good work breakdown structure, it gives you the systems you need in order to, get the step-by-step goals you need to accomplish, or you need to execute in order to complete the entire project, right? So work breakdown structure is something that is very good. Yeah, so it is best for complex projects with multiple deliverables. So when you take a close look at this, realize that you can see that it has multiple deliverables. Even under appointing a project manager and project team, it's even a major task, right? It could be a major task that has subtasks, because you could have a criteria you need to follow in order to appoint a project manager and project team, right? Some of the subtasks could be creating a Microsoft form, or let's say Google form, to enroll, or not to enroll per se, that's not the right word, to like get people who are interested, right? Yes. Maybe interviewing and all that. All those are subtasks, right? So when you have a complex project with multiple deliverables, you can do the work breakdown structure. Now let's move on to the Gantt chart. So Gantt chart is used to visualize schedule with dependencies over time. So I want us to focus on dependencies over time. Now, Gantt chart is best used when you have projects with clear sequences and deadlines, right? So let's look at a typical example of a project Gantt chart. So you realize that for the Gantt chart, I mentioned that it's used to visualize schedule with dependencies over time. So you can see dependencies over time. So this is a visual timeline, and then we have the dependencies. We have the tasks, right? Good. So yes. So this is an example of a project Gantt chart for a community charity fundraiser project, right? So you can see here are the tasks. So reserve revenue, create marketing material, send invitations. So these are the tasks, and host events, right? Now these are the start date and then the end date, and these are the duration. So to reserve a venue, the start date is March 3rd and then it ends on March 4th. So it means that it takes 2 days to what? Complete that particular task. Now we want to know what it depends on. So realize that we mentioned that Gantt chart visualize schedule with dependencies over time. So some tasks could be dependent on some other tasks. So example, when you look at create marketing materials, for this particular task is dependent on task 1. So this is the task ID. So you can't create marketing materials. You can't start creating marketing materials if you haven't reserved the venue. I mean, you can continue to do it. You can proceed to do it, but then per the project, right? Or let's say the project manager, he's saying that he or she is saying that this particular task is dependent on this. Now, when you look at, let's look at this particular task, set up venue, right? Set up venue. Now, we are saying that set up venue is dependent on task 6. So, which is collect auction items, and task 7, purchase supplies, and then task 8, finalize headcount. So you see, when you're setting up the venue, you definitely need, okay, so let's say if it's let's say a program that requires chairs, tables, and stuff, you need to finalize the headcount. I mean, the number of people who are going to attend the program. So that is why we are saying that setting up the venue is also dependent on 8, which is finalize the headcount. Right, and then purchase supplies. So let's say certain things that you need under the program, you need to purchase them. Right, good. And then host event. We are saying that host event is dependent on task 9, which is set up events. You can't host the event if you haven't set up your venue. As simple as ABCD. So this is an example of a project Gantt chart. It shows the status as well, whether it's complete or it's in progress. So if you are doing this with an Excel sheet, you can use a drop down like how we have here. So status, not started, completed, in progress. So you can use a drop down, you get it, so that you can get to choose the status, right? The current status. Yes. So this is how a Gantt chart looks like, right? Good. So I mean, that's good for now. Let's move on to network diagram. So what do we mean by a network diagram? So network diagram, it maps task relationships and critical path, right? So this one is used for projects where dependencies are complex. So you can see that Gantt chart is also focusing on visualizing schedule with dependencies, but then you use network diagram when the projects have dependencies that are very complex. You get it? Good. And when you want to also find relationship between the tasks, right? Now, critical path is something that I would explain very soon, so he gets a deep understanding of what I mean by that. So let's look at an example of a project management network diagram. So this is how a network diagram, a project management network diagram looks like, right? So let's take a close look at this, right? Actually, this is called a PERT chart, P-E-R-T chart, which stands for Program Evaluation and Revenue. Is it technique? Let me confirm that. It's been quite some time. PERT full form. This is okay. Yes, technique. Yes, I was right. So it stands for, so this is a PERT chart, which stands for Program Evaluation and Review Technique, right? Now, it is basically a project management tool used to schedule, organize, and coordinate tasks, right? Yes, within a project, as simple as ABCD. Right now, when you take a critical look at this network diagram, you can see that it has task blocks. So this is a task block. So you can see the task blocks they are interlinked, right? Good, they are interlinked. So when you take a typical task block, right? Let's look at the anatomy, right? So here you can see the task name, right? You can see the task name. So let's use this as an example. So the task name is obtain hardware, right? And then it has the ID, the task ID, and the duration. So the task ID is 003, this task ID is 01, this task ID is 02. So this is the first task, second task, third task, right? And you can see the duration. The duration is 20 days. And then you can also see the start and end date. So the start date is 6th February 2021, and then the end date is 26th February 2021. You can see that it collocates with the duration, which is 20 days, right? And then you can see who is responsible. So the responsible side, you normally put is just a placeholder for the person or team in charge. So if let's say John Doe take is supposed to ensure that this task is done, you can put his name there. If it is a team, so let's say the hardware team, you can put that there as well. So this is a typical example of a network diagram. And see, this is a whole it's a whole topic on its own. So you can go a step further to research about it. This is just a boot camp, so we will just touch on the overview, right? Yes. Now let's move on to the next one, which is the project charter. So a project charter is very simple. I have a template for you here. So for a project charter, it's basically a document that contains these details. So the project identification. So the name of the project ID, the project manager in charge, the project sponsor, date created, last updated, and version. Right now, once you are done, you move on to the project purpose. So the purpose of the project or the business justification. So let's quickly read this one. The local food bank has experienced a 40% increase in demand over the past year due to economic pressures in our community. Current funding is insufficient to meet this growing need. Blah blah blah. So this is more like the project purpose, the purpose of the project, right? And now the project objectives. So you now state the objectives of the project, and you now give the project scope. So the project scope is the list of things that the project demands. I mean, the list of things that forms the project. You get it? And yes, so in scope, right? So these are the things that are relevant to be done under the project, right? And then these ones are out of scope. So these ones are not linear, they are excluded, right? Because I mean, there are tasks that could be done as part of the entire thing, but it might be irrelevant to the main project, right? The reason why we bring the out of scope is because sometimes certain teams come up with projects, they start, and at the end of the day, they don't go with the timeline they have, they don't go with the plan and scope they have. They end up adding stuff, subtracting stuff. I mean, although it's quite good, but then it's always good to know what is out of scope so that you exclude them. Maybe in later versions you can add them. So this is an example of a project charter. And as you can see, it's used to document authorization, objectives, and scope. So realize that we really documented the scope, the objectives could be found here, right, and all that. So this is what makes project management very interesting, right? Good. So you can see that project management is not just software. Project management tools doesn't necessarily mean a software, right? We have documents, we have spreadsheets and all that. We have even have network diagrams and all that. Right, good. So I mean that's what we've done so far. I would want us to quickly look at the tracking tools, right? Then we take it from there. Now the tracking tools is very important. See, when you are working on a project, you set up your plan, you break the work down, you create a Gantt chart, you do your network diagrams, you do your project charter. If you don't track the project, if you don't track the progress of the project, you will never move on. And that's one mistake a lot of people make. They fail at tracking the progress of the project. They fail at tracking the tasks and the goals they need to achieve, right? Now, when it comes to tracking tools, we have the task board, which is also popularly known as the Kanban. We also have the status report, we have issue log, and then we have dashboard, right? So the task board, which is also known as the Kanban, is used to visualize workflow and work in progress. Yes, and it's best for ongoing work with continuous flow. So let's look at a typical task board and let's digest it from there. So this is a typical task board, and you realize that it has a visualization of work in progress. So if we take a close look at this, right? This is the task board. You can see that as simple as ABCD. Now, the things you see here are various tasks. So you put the task on a card. So that is why you can see add card here. Add card, right? Good. So when you take a close look at this, right, we are saying that on March 21st, we should have the project scope template, right? You can see the duration here and you can see tags here, right? So task board or the Kanban is usually used when you more like have you want to visualize the workflow and work in progress, right? We would dive deep into the project management tools. We'll look at certain tools, we'll try them, and then you get to see them very well, right? We also have status reports. So this is how a status report looks like. Now, status report is used to summarize progress, issues, and then next steps. And it is best for stakeholder communication. So let's say you are working on a project, right? The project is so complex to the extent that if you are tracking it under the work breakdown structure, there are major tasks. And then your stakeholders would want to know the progress or the status of each major task. So if, let's say, they are looking for such updates, you can use the status report. You get it? Good. So the status report, let's take a close look at it. It's used to summarize progress. I want you to see summarize progress, issues, and what's next steps. So when you take a close look at this is a typical status report, right? You can see the status, last, current, trend with colors. You get it? And then you can see the project manager's name, the objective, the dependencies, and then the updates, right? Yeah. So as usual, this is a typical status report. You can also look into that as well, right? Now, for the issue log, it's used to record problems, owners, and resolution status. So when you have projects with multiple moving parts, with this particular one, issue log, I would want you guys to go and research about it. Research about issue logs, right? Yes. Let me give you a typical example. You can be working on a software project and then there's something you call bugs or let's say errors in the application, right? So you need a way or you need a system or a software where you can record all the problems that are happening. You get it, so that the project manager can get to track that, and then you guys can use that to influence the project timeline. Because ideally, right, a project manager of a software company can set a project timeline of, let's say, 3 weeks. But because of critical bugs and errors, it could affect the project timeline. So you need to record all those errors or all those problems that you are facing and then solve them step by step. Assign due dates to it, targets and deadlines to it, so that you ensure that you work within the timeline. Right. Now we are going to look at the last tool under tracking tools, which is dashboard. So dashboard displays key metrics and health at a glance. And then it's best used for large projects needing visibility. So let's look at a typical project management dashboard. So under the project management dashboard, right, it gives you more like a visual summary of the various components of what you are tracking. So if you want to look at completed tasks, incompleted tasks, tasks that are overdue, you can get to see the summary on this dashboard, right? You can even get to track the people who are working well. So let's say, just like how you can see upcoming tasks by assignee, you can get a card on the dashboard that shows the list of employees who are working so hard, or you can even get to track their time that they are putting into the work and all that. Yes, so this is an example of a project management dashboard, right? So now we are going to move on to the communication tools, and this is very, very important part of the session, because see, after planning and tracking your project, you need to find a better way of communicating, right? You need to find a better way of communicating. Now we have the RACI matrix, which is clarify, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. We are going to look at this in detail, right? We also have meeting agenda. The purpose is to structure discussions for productivity. So let's say you are going to organize a meeting, right? You need to definitely set a meeting agenda, right? Yes, because you can't just organize a meeting with your team without any agenda. That is not a meeting. Yes. So meeting agenda is usually used for any project with regular meetings, right? So sometimes there's this thing called team huddles in software companies, because software companies use that. team huddles. So team huddles are short, 15 minutes or less, daily or weekly meetings used to align team members, share key updates, track performance, and solve problems quickly. Yes. So meeting agenda is good for stuff like that. And we also have stakeholder register, where we use that to track interest, influence communication needs, and diverse stakeholder groups. Right now, the communication tools, they are quite a lot. Most of these project management tools like ClickUp has an embedded chat feature where you can chat with your people, you can communicate together. Right? There's also this tool called Slack, which is widely used by engineering, software engineering companies, and all that. Yes, we are going to look at all this, but then I just wanted you to have an overview of what we are discussing today. Right, good. So let's move on to the next part where we are going to look at the selection criteria framework. We're going to look at the selection criteria framework. So when you are selecting a project management tool, you need to follow this criteria. So we use the scope criteria. So S for simplicity, C for compatibility, O for output quality, P for price and resources, and then E for extensibility. So for simplicity, these are some of the questions you need to ask yourself. How easy is it to learn and use this tool? Because see, you are working with your team. They have to also adapt to using the tool you are using, right? So you need to look at simplicity, right? You also need to look at compatibility. Does it work with your existing systems, right? So you see, the whole thing is that if you are selecting a tool, you have to select a tool that will not cause a lot of friction to your operations. It's going to delay the progress of your project. So you have to check if it is compatible with your existing systems. There are certain project management tools that do not have certain features that match with how your operations look like. So you shouldn't go for such tools, right? Then you have to also look at output quality. Does it produce clear outputs stakeholders can understand without explanation, right? So at the end of the day, you need to have a tool that when stakeholders are set to like engage with your project, they want to know how far, they want to know what's happening, they can easily look at the outputs and get to understand whatever is happening without any further explanation. So you have to look at output quality, you have to look at price and resources. So what's the total cost, including training, maintenance, and opportunity costs? Now let me use this direction, right? So most of these project management software tools have subscriptions. So you have to subscribe to, let's say monthly, you're going to pay $10 a month, or for enterprise, let's say you're going to pay $1,000 a year or something like that. You have to know the pricing and everything, right? Yes. And I'm also talking about the pricing because when you're on the free plan, you might have limited features, right? And you might struggle to use that to manage your projects. So you have to know the price and resources, and then you have to also know the extensibility. So can it grow with your needs as complex project arises? You have to look at that, because when you keep on accommodating more tasks, the complexity level will definitely increases, right? Yeah, so you need to know that as well. And now the final part of today's session, we are going to look at selection questions by factor, right? So at this point, this is just something that is more of context. So you just context and content. So you just have to, you can probably take a screenshot of this side and then you can read it further. It's easy to understand. So let me just take one and explain. Right. So when we talk about projects, when we talk about the factor, so let's say the project size. These are some of the questions you can ask yourself. How many tasks, people, or deliverables do you have? Right? And then some of the warning signs. Tool cannot handle expected volume. So if the tool cannot handle expected volume, then you shouldn't go for that particular tool. Right here. So you can look at this, and then we have the tool comparison metrics. So these are sample tools you can use for project management. We have spreadsheets, we have Trello, we have Asana, Monday.com, MS Projects, we have Notion, we have ClickUp. right? And a whole lot, right? Good. So spreadsheets are best for simple projects. The learning is low, the cost is free to low, and the collaboration is limited. The collaboration is limited to an extent that if you are using like an offline system like Microsoft Excel, you might not be able to add people and get to track things in real time. So that is why with this particular one, I used Google Sheets. So this one is cloud based. So with this one, you can share with your team. You can add anyone like Fred, right? Yes, you can add them to it for real time monitoring, status updates, and everything, right? Yes, that is why you can see that the collaboration here is limited. Now, when you look at Trello, Trello is also a project management tool. It's best for visualizing tasks, right? The learning is very low. It's very easy to use. The cost too, we have free tier, and then the collaboration is good, right? So you can look at this comparison matrix, and you can use that to select the best tool you have for your project, right? So once again, you can actually use AI to assess the various project management tools and get to select the best one you have to use, right? Yeah. So I mean, today we've had a very good conversation on project management tools. Next on our list, we are going to focus on the project management frameworks. So this brings us to the end of today's lesson on project management tools. Our next session is going to be a very amazing one. We are going to look at project management frameworks. I would want to see you in our next session, and trust me, we are really going to learn a lot. Until then, take care. Once again, my name is Gotininchi, the instructor for the Big Push Bootcamp. Have a nice day.